Drive Time here at KPPM Radio 93.5 FM as we have important discussions about the direction of our city, its future, and the leadership I will bring to the city of Lake Charles as your mayor.
Paid for by the Marshall Simien for Mayor campaign.
The views and opinions of the following program are not owned by 93.5 FM KPPM LP.
All right, friends, we are back here on 93.5 KPPM, and we are your community-minded station. And friends, you know, every Tuesday around this time, I am joined by, he's not even a guest anymore. I'm going to just say yeah. He's right at home. And so I am joined by none other than Attorney Marshall Simien. And he is here today, as he is every Tuesday, laying out his plan for the city. You know, he is running for the position of mayor of the great city of Lake Charles. And so, you know, many of you have been asking, well, you know, what is it that you're going to, you know, do, or what's your platform? What are your ideas? And so he's been laying that out step by step, bit by bit. And I know some of you say, well, I want to hear more from him, right? Well, on this time set, we only have, you know, a set amount of minutes to go through it. But if you would like to connect with the candidate, if you would like to hear more, know more about what he's got going or what's happening, you can do so. All you have to do is reach out to him. You can first go to the website, which is, let me make sure I give you all this website correctly. So you can go to the website, which is www.simienformayor.com. That's Simien, SIMIEN mayor.com. All right. Or you could also go to his social media platforms, which is Elect Marshall Simien. And you can reach out to him in any of those ways if you want to have a more in-depth discussion with him.
Yes.
And he'd be more than willing and happy to do that. And so now that I've covered those preliminaries, good morning, Simiens. How are y'all doing today?
Doing great. How you doing?
Oh, man, doing well. So, you know, we have covered a lot of ground. As a matter of fact, over the past couple of weeks, we have covered topics such as housing and public safety. As a matter of fact, we dealt with public safety on last week, and there were so many things within the umbrella or under the umbrella of public safety that you have in mind to kind of, you know, take a look at and to deal with that I had not really thought of before, at least under that umbrella. And so I'm glad we had an opportunity to have that talk. But I want to kind of steer the conversation in this direction on today. You know, a lot has been said about drainage and about I mean, quite frankly, the water issue that we have in this city. We understand that, I mean, this city is almost completely surrounded by water.
Yes.
We're not an island, but we do have a whole lot of water all around us. And with such being the case, when more water comes and falls, there's got to be a place for it all to go. And it doesn't seem as though that is in place fully, or at least not working to its full capacity. So share with me a little bit about your thoughts on drainage.
You know, James, drainage, some people make it very complicated, but drainage is really is a very simple concept. It's how do you move water from one area to another before it causes any damage? And that's the issues that we deal with, you know, especially we've been having these current rain events, not just in Southwest Louisiana or in Louisiana or even in the South, but I was looking at Connecticut yesterday and the amount of rain that they're getting. So one of the things that water is going to come. I mean, the planet is 75% water. So it's a matter of how do we coexist with the water that's coming. And one of the things that we deal with is how to keep that water out your homes, but put it in places because water's coming, it's going to come. How do you do that? So in 2017, when I ran for mayor, then I talked about what you see in large municipal cities. You have these very, very large retention ponds. They look like parks. You know, people don't even know they're retention ponds. You're just sitting in a park, got playground equipment, swings, walking trails. But you see these two big old giant pipes sticking out at some point at the end. Well, those are retention ponds, and that means that when they're building subdivisions and communities around there, a lot of the water drains into that area to hold it while the municipal system drains it out, because it's nowhere in the world in heavy rain events, as you keep building more and more concrete, that the water can just drain. So they do those things. I talked about that in 2017, and to his credit, the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury listened. So they put together a 17-acre retention pond over on Louisiana Avenue right by McNeese Street. That's right off Contraband Bayou. 17 acres can hold a lot of water, and that area around there where Johnson Hall is, that the water body is Contraband Bayou. A lot of water flows there, and the people were flooding out pretty regularly. I had one client with my law firm. We had helped her through her hurricane recovery. She was in her 80s, got her all fixed up. Her house was redone, everything was fixed up, and then they had a rain event, and she got 4 feet of water in her home, and she wound up having her children just had enough and wound up moving her to Houston to take care of her.
Okay.
But I remember how heartbreaking it was, because she took a lot of pride in her home. Mm-hmm. Well, since the police jury put that 17-acre retention pond there, we've had several other rain events. Some of them were pretty heavy, and I was talking to some of the residents out there, and they said, look, this thing really works. They haven't had any flooding. The water's in there, and the municipal system can catch up. So that's one of the things that we deal with, but this deals with watersheds, and the whole thing is watershed is how do you channel water, retain that water until and then eventually allow it to move to outflow points. Mm-hmm. And that's what the watershed is. I think that's the key to drainage.
Okay. And so in our city at present, you've mentioned one watershed. Is that the only watershed we have at present in the city?
At present, that's the only one, but there's another one, a major one that's underway. The Louisiana Watershed Initiative has 3 projects that are going on right now in Lake Charles. One of them, I think people know about that one. That's the Greenwich Terrace, where they're in the process of buying out a number of homes that usually flood out, but those are along Contraband Bayou on that area near the 210 area. So they're going to eventually buy those homes out and develop another retention area for water over there. Mm-hmm. I think right now the buyout program is funded at about $30 million. That's for the buyout.
Right.
Now, once they buy out and relocate, then I think there's $11.85 million that's allocated to build a flood storage area, basically a retention area, and that flows out to Cayuchi Coulee, which, if you notice, Cayuchi Coulee they've done some cleanup out there, but if you notice that down Oak Park Boulevard, there's that big giant lateral that's cemented in, and that lateral has been retaining more and more water than I've ever seen. At one point it gets up almost to the edge of the street, and that's a lot of homes in there. So that's supposed to help retain some of that water and let that flow out, because that would be some pretty large homeowner damage if those areas started flooding. And so, and one of the issues that you have with the drainage area on Oak Park Boulevard is that it's all concrete. So there's no way for the water to really seep in. So it really has to move the water out. The more concrete that goes, the less areas that normally used to soak up water that there are. So the water continues to run. I mean, the water's coming. Just got to figure out where to put it. So the Greenwich Terrace is one. The other thing is they have the 6th Street drainage improvements that about $3.1 million. That's still in application process, but all of those things are some of the projects that are coming to help with watershed, which is, I think that's the first step to drainage. The other step is going to be the existing drainage systems. How do you get those to work more efficiently?
Okay. And so it's good to know that there are plans in the work, and I do know a lot of folks were at one point upset about the buyout in the terrace, and I mean, I understand it and I get it, but it's good to know that there is a plan to help with the water, because I mean, I used to maintain a couple of yards in the terrace, and like you said, they do just have that big concrete ditch, which
Yeah.
is good. But as we discovered during well, it was the flood that we had after the hurricanes, and during that flood, we discovered that once those concrete ditches fill up, where does the water go? Right into the streets. And that's what began to happen. And so it's good to know that there is more of a plan than just putting more concrete ditches and cleaning out laterals and all those kind of stuff, which is good. You know, it helps, but it's not quite enough, I don't believe.
No, and the buyout has to be, I'm glad they put $30 million into that, because, you know, you're asking people to relocate places where they've laid their heads for generations, you know. So that's not an easy thing for the people to move and relocate. But at the same time, the flood events, they just wear you out. And, you know, the amount of cost for flood insurance, or even being able to get flood insurance now in those kind of areas, makes it almost practical that people have to do that. You know, the same thing is happening in Cameron Parish. A lot of people just cannot afford to elevate their homes to the heights that's required, and it's basically the government saying, look, we just can't afford to keep funding recovery in these areas. So it's an unfortunate part of the human condition, but it's a part that I hope that we can find a good sweet spot for people. I mean, this could be an opportunity to get out of flood-ravaged areas, because water is merciless when it gets into things, and get into some good areas that don't flood, that get a new start and do something that's going to be a generational blessing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do know, like I said, one of the yards that I used to maintain, the folks ended up, you know, being part of that buyout, and they were able to get a decent, you know, new place for them to stay in, and it was a step up. Although this had been in their family for a couple of generations, they were happy to at least be able to find something decent. Now they did have to fight for, you know, the amount that they got, but that's a whole different story for another day.
Right.
So let's talk about. We've kind of talked a little bit about it, I believe, but let's talk more about the practical application of what you're referring to or talking about in this drainage situation. And like I said, I think we've kind of already talked about it when we talk about what's happening over in the terrace. But let's dive a little bit deeper and talk a little bit more about the practical application of drainage and watershed and all of these things that we can do.
Sure. I went to a community meeting last week that they had off the Fifth Avenue area, just south of 210. You know, a lot of people in the Willowick area, there's a lot of apartments and homes coming up over there, and they're starting to experience some serious flooding issues. And they had a number of people there that came out and talked about it. And some of the issues that they have is, you know, the Contraband Bayou does run by that area, but there's a lot of development along McNeese Street and along Highway 14 that's starting to put their drainage into that Contraband Bayou too. So they're almost in a situation where whoever gets their water there first is going to not have damage, and whoever doesn't is going to start suffering flood issues.
Right.
And even though there's a 17-acre retention pond further down the street by Louisiana Avenue, the issue is how do you get water to that area? Because, you know, the Contraband Bayou narrows up. I mean, by McNeese is pretty generous, but when you get by, like Christian Baptist has a location off of Fifth Avenue, you look at that, they call that Contraband Bayou. It's really just a little ditch, and there's no way in the world that can handle or flow water toward that retention pond. You know, now the same thing that they're doing in the Greenwich Terrace. There's an area in the Greenwich Village where there's a lot of homes that they were complaining about. I didn't realize it, that are abandoned and not boarded up, and they're starting to have a lot of vagrancy and issues in there. And I don't know who the property owners there, but that's something that needs to be addressed through the condemnation process to get people accountable for their properties, or maybe that's a potential area to help alleviate some of the flooding that's happening in that area. If they can build a retention pond back there, because that is Contraband Bayou, and I think these types of retention ponds are going to watershed a lot of issues and help save a lot of property. You also have, like for instance, my experience with it has been that when I was in the city council, we did the $90 million bond issue. We did Riverside Park. And a lot of people have heard of Riverside Park. Many visit and see it's a beautiful area, but I don't think a lot of people realize that Riverside Park is a really functional watershed. It's a natural watershed that got enhanced. You know, about twice a year, the Calcasieu River overflows its boundaries, not from the rain up here, but when there's rain further up in North Louisiana, all that water is flowing down and it overflows. So what we do is we close the park down, let the water go in. The Riverside Park is actually 210 acres. It's not just the waterside portion, but all that swamp area in between, and all the water goes into there, and that's what nourishes that habitat. And then when the water goes back down and recedes, they open it up, clean up the park again, and then it functions. But it's a park, but it really functions as a watershed. And the other project that I worked on was Enterprise Boulevard extension. Now, Enterprise Boulevard it's a nice looking road on the top, but the most impressive things about Enterprise is what's underneath it. When we did Enterprise, we wanted to extend that area. There's an outflow that services all of North Lake Charles. All that water flows out past the Friendships property into the Calcasieu River. Well, lo and behold, we found out the city didn't own that outflow, and that became a major issue because you got to control those kind of access points to keep them clean, keep them allowable so that the water can get out of the communities. And ironically, we wound up acquiring the property, and it wound up going through the court system. And it was my chance to work with Judge Wilford Carter because it was in his court, and we got it done. You know, the city acquired that outflow, the area. Then when we built Enterprise, underneath Enterprise, the way the water collects in the cities was also an issue too. You know, a lot of people have ditches. Those ditches are actually natural retention areas. But when you start closing the ditches, then how do you get the water back into the areas that you've taken away? And most of these streets, if you look at a street like Goss Boulevard, the areas where the water goes in, the drains are at each intersection. The problem with that means that all that area does not have any access points, so all the water has to pile up and flow into one area, and that causes issues. So when we built Enterprise, we put drains about every 100 feet. And so that area never floods. I mean, the water gets off the street pretty quickly. We put drainage systems in there because that area drains, most of North Lake Charles drains toward the Calcasieu River in that area. So we put drainage systems underneath that road that are 8 foot by 8 foot wide. So you can actually drive a truck under there. But that area will never flood. And with the outflow now, we've taken care of a significant drainage problem in the North Lake Charles area. And I think those are the type areas we have to do in other places too. The city depends on what they call gravity drainage. The water has to drain itself by gravity. The only problem is we're on a flatland, so that, you know, water doesn't always cooperate. Instead of trying to make its way through things, it'll just inundate and get into people's homes. So some of the things that we have to think about is, but other places like New Orleans and other places do, is that, look, in certain events, gravity drainage is going to flow. In others, if the water gets too high, then you're going to have to start actually pumping the water. Mm-hmm. You know, where I live, I have at my home, we have a system where we have a retention area. It's not a retention area, it's just a system that we pump to the next system to keep water moving, keep things flowing so it doesn't overflow. It's not used all the time, it's just when it gets high, but it actually works well. And I think we need to look at that too, because like I said, the simple part of drainage is how do you get water from one place to another before it causes damage? Either it's gonna flow by itself, or you can make it go if you try to pump it where it needs to go.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, Mrs. Simien, I tell you, each week I learn a little bit more. I find out a little bit more information, but I also each week look forward to your wrap-up commentary. So I'm going to kick it over to you.
Marsha has a wealth of information and experience. Drainage is definitely one of them. He often tells me, Paula, I think I know a lot on a lot of different subjects. Draining, the drainage system here is just so important that it's an effective system, you know, and he talked about different types of systems. One that he talked about in 2017 was the retention ponds and how effective that was. We don't want the flooding, don't want damage from the water. You know, we don't want poor sanitation because of the flooding, and it's just something that we need to address. We need to address so we can use our lands properly, or how it's designed, or how it's how you want to use your land. So what I can say is that Marshall is not a stagnant person. He is a forward-thinking person. And he does his research. If he doesn't know something, he's always looking at different cities, how they do, how they deal with their different systems. So I'm just really proud of him. And he's here to talk to you about the drainage system and how he's been effective in the city, and wants to continue to be effective for you. He is, again, quite educated, quite experienced, and he is an ear for the community. If you want to talk with him, go ahead. He's here. He wants to know your personal needs. He's here, and he's willing to be your voice.
All right. Well, I tell you what, Attorney Simien, if you could just remind everybody of all those outlets of how they can connect with you, whether it be the website, the social media, however, maybe someone wants to contribute to the campaign, or like I said, maybe they just want to have a one-on-one. If you could just give us that information.
Yeah, the best place is to go to the website, www.simienformayor.com, SIMIENFORMAYOR.com. It's got 4 tabs, who I am, what the platforms are. It's got all these videos and information. So if anybody wants to find out different specifics, they can find that. But it also has a tab that if you want to donate, if you want a yard sign, if you want to volunteer and help, there's all kind of ways to access. Also on the Facebook page, and I think it's Instagram, it's Elect Marshall Simien. You can message or direct message me, and we respond to that too. So, and look, if people want to get together, neighbors, I've had one person gave me a call when I went. The whole neighborhood was there, and we had a really, really fun. I love meeting people and talking about our city. I think we all want the same thing, and we're going to get there. So just get in touch with me. I'm always accessible.
All right, friends, there you have it. And let me say again, thank you to the Simiens for coming on in today. I mean, like I said, I learn something every week that maybe I didn't know beforehand, or I get a deeper understanding of it. I kind of knew some of the stuff, but you took it a little bit further.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for that. And I pray that the listening audience has been able to glean and get some information as well, and maybe made their mind up,
sure,
or are on the way to making their mind up to deciding who they want to be their next mayor here in the city of Lake Charles. Friends, if you missed this, or if you have a loved one or a family member who you think needs to hear this, it will rebroadcast today right here on 93.5 at 5:15 p.m. So you can tune in for that. Also, it is up on our Facebook page right now. It is up on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And then you'll be able to catch it on YouTube a little later on as well. Okay, so I want to encourage you, check it out, share it with a friend, and then share it again. All right. Friends, you're tuned in to 93.5 KPPM. We are your community-minded station, and you have we've had this moment, meet the candidate with Attorney Marshall Simien. He is running for the mayor of the great city of Lake Charles. Keep it locked. We'll be right back with more great gospel music. But first, let me take a quick commercial break right here on I Am Encouraged Radio with your host, James W. Chavis.
From the best in gospel music from yesterday to today, throw in great conversation covering local